Hello again, my fellow Jeti users, and welcome back to Harry's Workshop for another of my little Jeti Clinic videos. In this one, I am going to deal with a request from Jeti user Phil, who wanted to solve a little programming problem. And when I came up with a solution, I thought, actually, it's worth publishing this one because the answer is not quite as obvious as at first you think it is. And it's something that may actually be of use to people in all sorts of situations, not just Phil's. And Phil's request was this. He's got a lighting controller which is operated from a 3-position switch. And in position 1, the lights are off. In position 2, the navigation lights are on. In position 3, navigation and landing lights are on. And what Phil wanted was that when the wheels and the flaps are down, it would go to position 3, in effect, the navigation lights and landing lights. But if the gear and the flaps aren't down, then it will be navigation lights only. Okay, first you think, wow, simple, logic switch, landing light, gear and flaps, assign that to the lights function, there you go. Yes, but you would lose the option of manually switching them, you'd lose the option of switching them off altogether, and you couldn't do any ground testing of the whole setup before you finally go out for takeoff. So ideally what you want to do is keep the 3-position switch, and yep, we can do that. So here's the 3-position switch I will use as the light controller for off in one position. I think down position would be off, mid position, navigation lights, upper position, navigation and landing lights, although you just reverse the servo if you want it the other way around. And I'll use my normal flap and retract controller. So if you have a quick look at this, I'm feeling it's channel 6. Here we go. Oh no, channel 8 is the light controller. So there we are. We can 3-position switch between +100, 0 and -100. So the light controller will be happy then that you're switching between lights off, nav lights and landing lights. Okay. Obviously we're going to set up a logic switch on the gear and flap controls. But if we were to assign that to the function, if we have a look in it, in functions assignment, lights, if we were to assign that in case of the physical switch, then all it's going to do is switch the full system between nav and landing lights in one and no lights in the other. So that doesn't work. Problem here is that basically we only want it to work when the selection switch is at the mid position, which is navigation lights. So we want the gear and retract to toggle that between nav lights and nav and landing lights, but only when the mid position, so that we still have the 2 end positions to override it, so we can manually switch in flight if we have to, and you can test the whole setup on the ground, switching off, auto or all. Okay, how can we do that? Well, we can use, funnily enough, a mixer to do this for us. So first of all, let's look at setting up the logic switches. The obvious logic switch to start with is your gear and flaps. So we'll do that. Put my gear into the up position, move it to the down position. Okay. And control 2 will be the flap. Now I'm using a 3-position flap switch here. Phil mentioned when the landing flaps are down, but you might want it to be on in takeoff flap as well. So let's have a look at how you do both of those. If you want it to be on only at the full landing flap position, you put your flap switch to the middle takeoff position, move it to landing flap, and there you go. So there you can see the input is on when we're in landing flap, but it would be off at takeoff and flap up. What if you would like it to be on in the middle and lower flap positions? I'll clear it out again. No, I'll put it to the mid position. Clear it. Now from mid position, I'll move it to flaps up. Fine. So flaps up it's on, flaps mid and down it's off, which is not what you want. But press Rev, the reverse button. And now, flaps up it'll be off, and in flaps mid and down it will be on. So choose whether you want it in the mid and down position or down only, depending on how you assign and reverse it. Okay. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'll leave it with the switch comes on at both the takeoff and landing flap position. Okay. And come down here, it's going to be an AND condition. So gear down and flaps at either takeoff or landing position, the switch goes on. Okay to that. However, we only want this mixer that we're going to assign the logic switches to be active when the switch is in the middle of the sort of master light switch. We don't want it working at every position because we want the two end positions to have no effect from the logic switch of the gear and the flaps. So how do we do that? Well, we're just going to daisy chain that into logic switch 2. Come down there. So control 1 will be, press this button, logic switch 1. Say OK to that. And put our 3-position switch at either of the end positions, doesn't matter. Move it to the mid position. That's where it's on. Say OK, come down. And again, there we are. So let's have a look at the outputs here. The first logic switch works on the gear and flap and will only go on when gear is down and flap is in takeoff or landing position. The second logic switch will only come on if logic switch 1 is on and our lighting selector is at its mid position. There we are. If the lighting selector is in the mid position, but the gear is up, it's off, or if the flaps are moved to the full up position, or if mid position if you'd set it for full down flap only, then it all goes off. So there we are. Logic switch 2 will only switch on when gear is down, flaps are down, and the selector switch is in the mid position. Yep. And now we can assign that to a mixer. And the mixer will mix from the lights to the lights. Come down to advanced. The master value will be 100%, which won't do anything because, of course, the switch is in the middle, so its output value is 0. And adding 100% of 0 to 0 is adding 0 to 0. It's not going to do anything. I'll just quickly prove that. Which was our lights? It's this one. There we go. In fact, it's overriding it way over to 125. Let's say OK to that. So we come along to the switch, and the switch will be, of course, logic switch 2. OK, so now the mixer will only come on when logic switch 2 is in the correct position. So we go there. I'll move flaps up so that the logic switch can't operate. And now my 3-position switch goes as before from 100 to 0 to -100. I'll put the flap down so the logic switch will come on at the mid position. So 100, 0, -100. But as I said, it's not actually doing anything to it at the mid position because 100% of 0 is still 0. Okay, so we can modify that with the curve. Come in here, change it to a constant value. Come down here and just wind it up to 100%. There we go. Say OK to that. And now we'll take a look at the output. Now with the switch in mid position, it's gone to 100 because the logic switch has got something to work with. So if I raise the wheels, this will go back to 0. OK, put the wheels down. I'll raise the flaps. This will go back to 0. There it goes. Okay, so let's have the condition. You're on the ground. You've started everything up. Your wheels, of course, are down. flaps are up, you move the switch, you can switch between lights off, navigation lights, navigation and landing lights. So you can check everything is working. You put the switch back to the mid position, which is navigation lights only. You put the gear, as say, is down. You put the flaps to the takeoff or landing position, and you get the landing lights as well. You take off. Let's say you raise the gear first. You go back to the navigation lights only position. Raise the flaps, stays in the navigation lights only position. Do your flying around. If you want to, you can manually switch between nav and landing lights off. But you just leave the switch in the mid position. You've got your navigation lights on. You're setting up ready to land. You do a gear pass, at least in the jet world we tend to do a gear pass. Gear goes down, but flaps are still up, so you still get just navigation lights. Now you put your flaps down and the landing lights come on as well as the nav lights. And after you've landed, either bring your flaps up, puts it back to nav lights only, and as you're taxiing back in and ready to shut down, you can switch off entirely with the switch -100%. And there you go.